help. Let our work always find its origin in you, and through you reach completion. We ask these in all prayers through Christ our Lord. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you. If you'd please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We do have two proclamations this evening. The first is for Older Americans Month, May of 2023. To the citizens of Bel Aire, Kansas, greetings. Whereas Bel Aire is a community that includes citizens age 60 and older, and whereas the older adults in Bel Aire are among of our most treasured resources, united by historical experiences, strengthened by diversity, and interpreting events through varied perspectives and background to bring wisdom and insight to our community. And whereas increasing numbers of adults are reaching retirement age and remaining strong and active for longer than ever before, and whereas the older adults in Bel Aire deserve recognition for the contributions they have made and will continue to make to the culture, economy, and character of our community and our nation, and whereas our community can provide that recognition and respect by improving the quality of life for older Americans by increasing their opportunities to remain active and engaged in community life, providing individualized services and support systems to maintain the dignity, independence, and self-determination of older Americans as they age, combating against attitudes by honoring their past, present, and future contributions. Therefore, I, Justin Smith, Council President, do hereby proclaim May 2023 to be Older Americans Month. I urge every citizen to take time this month to honor our older adults and the professionals, family members, and volunteers who care for them. Our recognition and involvement of older Americans can enrich our entire community's quality of life. The next proclamation is to recognize those in public service. Public Service Recognition Week, May 7th through 13th, 2023. Whereas Americans are served every single day by public servants at the federal, state, county, and city levels, these unsung heroes do the work that keep our nation working. Whereas public employees take not only jobs but oaths. Whereas many public servants, including military personnel, police officers, firefighters, Border Patrol officers, embassy employees, healthcare professionals, and others risk their lives each day in service to the people of the United States and around the world. Whereas public servants include teachers, inspectors, law enforcement, bus drivers, managers, engineers, public works, recreation employees, firefighters, accountants, customer service representatives, laborers, computer technicians, social workers, and countless other occupations. Day in and day out, they provide the diverse services demanded by the American people of their government with efficiency and integrity. And whereas without these public servants at every level, continuity would be impossible in a democracy that regularly changes its leaders and elected officials. Therefore, I, Justin Smith, Council President of the City of Bel Aire, do hereby announce and proclaim to all citizens and set seal hereto that May 7th through 13th, 2023 is Public Service Recognition Week. All citizens are encouraged to recognize the accomplishments and contributions of government employees at all levels, federal, state, county, and city. We certainly do appreciate our public service folks. All right, next item is determine agenda additions. Does anyone have an agenda addition? All right, moving on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda contains two items. The first is the minutes of the April 18th meeting, and the second is confirming the mayor's reappointment of David Floyd to the Planning Commission. Are there any questions or discussion on the consent agenda?
Mr. Council President,
Councilmember David.
make a motion to approve the consent agenda as listed and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second.
Have a first and a second. Are there any discussion? See no discussion, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries 5-0. City requested appearances. Oh, sorry. Discussion and approval of appropriations ordinances. Almost skipped one here. So our appropriation ordinance includes the basic expenses for operations. There are two capital improvement payments, One closes out the Batten Street reconstruction, and the other is a UP payment for Woodlawn. Appropriations Ordinance 23-08.
Mr. Council President,
Commissioner Dean.
I'll motion to approve the appropriations ordinance 23-08.
Second.
A first and a second. Any discussion? See no discussion. I'll call for a vote. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Now we're at city requested appearances, where we have 2 representatives from Garver to discuss the progress on Woodlawn and 45th Street. First up is the 45th Street design update with Mr. Kinley from Garver.
Well, good evening. Ken Lee with Garver, 1995 Midfield Road. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about our project. I've got a quick slideshow presentation I'll run through. Let me just lead by saying that everything right now is conceptual, subject to change. So we're still working through this, but I wanted to give you an update. So we'll start out with primarily what we've been doing for the last couple months is stakeholder discussions, going through and meeting with different groups along the project and having discussions with them. And that includes Sunrise Christian Academy. Ann and I met with them a couple weeks ago to talk about their site, what they've got going on, the impacts on that. USD 259. Ann and I met with Shane Schumacher with USD 259 and talked about the sidewalk over to Stuckey Middle School. City of Wichita, I spoke with Sean Meliez. He's the city's lead design engineer, and talked about intersection improvements and the fact that we'll be working with him on that. Some frontage road residents if you recall, when we talked about this before, at the kind of the westerly end of the project, there was a frontage road proposed that's partially vacated, and we met with them to talk about reestablishing that to make a safer environment. And then, of course, just meeting with Bel Aire staff. I'm going to start out talking a little bit about the sidewalk discussion at Stuckey. This is an exhibit I prepared for the school district. They said that although they support the sidewalk in 45th Street, they feel like it would actually be more beneficial, particularly in the short term, to do a crosswalk at Willow Point of some kind, and some kind of signalized walk to make a safer environment there. They're still interested in 45th Street. And the good news on this is they will participate in the cost, and we haven't got a specific cost share agreement on that yet. I gave them the total cost. They're going to get back with me, but they'd actually like to see this happen sooner than the 45th Street project is scheduled to happen. I don't know that it would happen like this summer, but they'd like to see it before 2 years is up, because for them, we were told it costs them $60,000 a year per bus they operate. So if they have to spend $50,000 or $60,000 to do some work, that's money well ahead for them in terms of that. And it provides a safer environment for kids. And I will say that I leave for work at 7:10 in the morning. Every day I see 2 kids walking in the ditch on 45th Street over to Stuckey. So I don't know where they live. I don't know if they're in the new duplexes, but I know that we have kids walking in the ditch to get to school. So again, the 45th Street is still, or 45th sidewalk is still in consideration. I will mention there's an existing walk that goes through here. So the only thing that's being done would be a crosswalk over here and then a sidewalk here across this empty parcel. Our recommendation is to do what they call a rapidly repeating flashing beacon, which is a yellow, you hit a button and it flashes lights real quickly yellow. It would have warning signs, street signs. There's other signage we'd have to look at as far as advanced warning signage, but it's under consideration. So the next thing that I'll just run through real quick. This is the west half of the design concept as it stands now. Again, subject to change. But I'm working with Ann to kind of come up with the concept that we'll be presenting to council in a workshop in the not too distant future. One thing I'll point out here is at the southeast corner, we're showing the sidewalk running along the property line there. That would be what we would be doing in an add alternate scenario where we leave it with an open ditch out there. The storm sewer boxes out there are going to be very, very, very expensive. And if we run into a situation where we have to do some cost saving, we can save somewhere between $250,000 and $350,000 by leaving that ditch open if we need to. However, we'll have an alternative that will provide a much nicer like pause point rest area, more of an entry feature into Bel Aire. We won't actually be doing any artwork or anything, but we'll just have it prepped. So that'll be the other option there. I'm still working on that exhibit at this point. We've got a frontage road that we're considering. I mentioned that a minute ago for these properties here. The frontage road as it exists today, the right-of-way stops right there. We want to continue it over. We've met with the property owners, and all of them are supportive to some degree or another. The one thing that's, I'll go into that a little bit more in detail, but they are supportive of it. This intersection improvement is a preliminary layout. The lengths of the storage bays and those type of things are going to change based on our traffic study that's going to be done later this year. And it's not very easy to see, but right there and right there, there's some green medians. We're proposing medians in areas where turn lanes aren't, or turn movements aren't possible. We think that it'll help the corridor aesthetically, and it's a traffic calming element to just not have huge swaths of wide open pavement for the whole way. So we're going to recommend considering that. Going into the west half a little bit more, the frontage road discussion, again, we've met with the property owners. Access management for safety is a driving concern there. If we don't do a frontage road, you could end up with as many as 12 driveways onto 45th Street in that area, which would be highly problematic from a traffic safety standpoint. A couple of them would have U-shaped drives, but it's just not safe to have them all going out there directly. We did meet with them. The one request they had is that we make the road a little bit wider than the normal right-of-way would allow, and to give them room to park in front, because it would be a fairly narrow frontage in front of their house. So they did ask for that. The city has established a policy. If you're building a new roadway, you got to help pay for it. So we've talked with them about that. We've given, we had that conversation. I've put together a cost estimate that Ann is reviewing right now, but it is going to be an expectation if we build this frontage road that they help participate in the cost. We're asking everybody else to do it. You got to be fair. The one thing to note is it's not very easy to see here, but along this west edge here and along the south edge, there is some right-of-way acquisition that's part of this work. If we're going to be going after any kind of funding for this project, we'll be required to compensate them for that, and the city's going to hire a real estate specialist to help with that acquisition process. Next on the block here, let's go. There's that. So the Oliver intersection, again, this is conceptual in nature. It's going to change. I have talked to Sean Melias with the city of Wichita. He said that they would support the project and they'll work with us as far as any kind of permitting and such. Future maintenance, how that's going to be maintained is going to be a point of discussion, but they said that they've worked with the city of Bel Aire at 37th Street and they felt like that went really well. So that'll be kind of the template to start with, but they're definitely supportive of the project. Sean did say, I told him the same story about seeing kids in the ditch, and he said that the city of Wichita will provide funding for the sidewalk. Maybe not all of it, but they're willing to provide some funding from their arterial street funding to help pay for that sidewalk. So they're willing to partner on that, since it is city of Wichita right away in that area. We're still looking at a roundabout. I don't have any presentation on that today, but it'll still be something to be looked at once we know if the traffic study is supporting that. The east half of the project, we've got turn lanes established along the way here. Another median proposed. We have talked to Sunrise Christian Academy about relocating their driveway. They were supportive of that. They actually like it. They've got some development plans for the site that are in the not too distant future that would be supportive of that. The discussions with them and talking about what's going on here, they did not like the idea of having the crosswalk a couple hundred feet west of their site. They felt like students would just jaywalk rather than walk over to it. We're going to do a traffic signal warrant analysis, but we're probably going to plan on plumbing that intersection for signals. We won't put any signals in right now. We don't expect it to meet warrants, but we'll have it prepped to put in signals at a future date. We may do an RRFB at that intersection in the short term to provide a way to warn drivers that there's pedestrians there, but we may end up with signals. We don't know, but everything is saying that this needs to be considered as a signalized intersection. The existing 45th Street frontage road will remain unchanged there. We won't make any changes to that. We do have 3 properties at the east end of the project that will require right-of-way acquisition as part of the project. So again, we'll be working with the city and a real estate specialist on that acquisition. Let's see. So next steps, we're going to do some additional meetings with the owners of the Kruger property to talk about that frontage road a bit more and the cost of it, to kind of make sure that we have a consensus on it and that we can get a successful petition to have them participate in the cost. We're going to continue to coordinate with Sunrise. We're waiting for that feedback from USD 259. I have started a hydrologic and hydraulic review of that Hillcrest Pond to determine if we can do some improvements on that. My plan is to do a workshop presentation in June where we'll be bringing the concept to you and then begin design after that. I will also mention that we've had one meeting with city staff to talk about a project website, and we're going to continue to do those meetings. We want to go ahead and have a website operating sometime this summer just for public information. And with that, I'll take any questions you have.
Mr. President? Mr. Lee, would you be able to send me an electronic copy of your slides? We weren't able to see any of that from remote.
Yeah, we can do that.
Thank you.
I would appreciate one as well.
Okay. They were amazing. They were good slides.
Thank you.
Very thorough.
Mr. Council President,
Ms. Hipper.
thank you for the presentation. Just real quick for people at home, and remind me of the timeline of kind of what we're looking at for everything.
Yeah. So what we're looking at right now is we will be bringing a concept in early June to either a workshop or a council meeting to have you review. Probably a workshop would be best, where we'll have some of the questions that were still outstanding resolved. And we're only going to look at the eastern, like 3/4 of the project. The intersection at the west end won't be part of the design, but we're going to go through the concept, talk about the decisions we've made, verify that you're in support of them. Things like the median islands, do you want those? Where we have some of the sidewalk aligned, some of the choices we're making on how we're aligning things. There'll be some feedback on it as far as that goes. So that'll happen in June. We will begin design in June on that part of the project. Our traffic study is currently scheduled, depending on progress on Woodlawn, but that's scheduled to happen probably in early September at this point, is what we're hoping for, but it's subject to change based on progress out there. Once we get the traffic study or the traffic data collected, we're going to do our traffic study. That will help guide us on information for the intersection study. We will then schedule a public meeting to go over the presentation on that, because that's the part where people are going to probably have the most interest on giving feedback on. We will do that in probably October, November timeframe, and then go into design, full-blown design early next year and plow through. The goal is to have it ready to go out to bid in February of 2025. Now the catch, got to get money first too. So it's preliminarily scheduled, but there's no actual funding that's been specifically assigned to the project yet that we have. So it's subject to getting that WAMPO funding.
Any other questions for Mr. Lee?
Yeah, Mr. President, just would like to clarify Ken's last statement there. This is on the WAMPO TPD line and in line for funding. It is the next project to be funded, but the funding has not been brought forward yet. But we expect it to here sometime in the next year or so.
Great clarification. Thank you for that. All right. Thank you, Mr. Lee. Next
you.
up, we have Pat Herman on the Woodlawn construction update.
Here we go. Okay, can you guys hear me? I think the last time I didn't have it right for half of the presentation here. Okay, appreciate your time. Just have a quick update here on the Woodlawn project. Let's see. As always, we start with the safety statement here, and just there's a lot up there, but just real briefly here. who's at risk. Literally, if you're working outside in the heat, it doesn't matter who you are, what kind of shape you're in, what age you are at risk. So something to keep in mind there. Some ways that we can mitigate those risks are water, rest, and shade. We can modify our work schedule to do the more laborious tasks during a cooler portion of the part of the day, and then avoid coffee, alcohol, and sugary drinks. So yeah, we continue to use public involvement. It's a great tool. It allows your residents and property owners and business owners around the project to be able to reach out to us, and we can reach back in a pretty quick time frame and address their concerns. So currently we are at 67% complete with the project. I think the last address I had 67%, and I was calculating the 390 days, but I didn't calculate the 40 days into that. So we had 67% last time. So I just wanted to clarify that here. So we have currently we have 290 working days charged to the project, 20 days since the last update, and it's 390 contracted, adjusted contracted working days plus 40 cleanup days. Current activities, we've got storm drain line, mainly south of the railroad tracks. We're also getting ready to install some water and sewer and storm sewer within the right of way for the in the railroad. Also in the main line, generally south of the railroad tracks, are putting in aggregate base and getting ready for pavement. And also, I think it came up in the last address there, how are they going to deal with the vet clinic? So we're going to, the contractor put in 2 temporary drives for the vet clinic there as well. And so here's one of the new entrances. I believe that's the vet clinic there. Current activities. And they're installing reinforced concrete pipe, bedding it, and doing that installation there over by the Sherwin-Williams. So here you can see that pipe on the ground. That's the casing for the pipe that they're going to do a jack and bore that is going to go underneath the railroad tracks there in the right of way. And that's the boring equipment right there. And it's down in the boring pit. So it's a pretty cool piece of machinery there. So currently, we're still in phase 2E. We're going to remain in phase 2E until we get through with that utility work and the right of way. The good news is contractor is completing phase 3 work in conjunction with that phase 2E work. So hopefully the phase 3 portion of this goes by pretty quick. So upcoming activities, we've got asphalt paving operations coming up south of the railroad tracks. We're going to have railroad right-of-way utility boring operations. The flaggers are actually coming out on, I think they're scheduled May 3rd. So storm sewer within the right-of-way and south of the railroad tracks. And as I've already said, the 2 temporary driveways for the vet clinic there. And traffic flow. So since they've closed down the intersection at the railroad, let's see, click it. Okay. 45th Street, we've got traffic in all directions here. We've got north and southbound traffic north of the railroad tracks, as well as north and southbound traffic south of the railroad right away. But that shaded area there, that's closed for construction. That it'll stay closed there for probably through July. So it's going to be about approximately a 3-month. If everything goes right, we don't get any weather or anything like that. So with that, I'll stand for questions.
Any questions? All right.
Mr. Council
Mr.
President,
Dean.
I had one quick question. I know you said through July. Can you clarify what the contractor has told you as far as how many working days they expect to need so that we can have a better idea of that moving target? Because we all know it's going to move. How many working days did they state in their schedule? I remember hearing 60.
I believe that's,
So that's right at
Yeah,
3
so,
months.
yeah, generally it's 20 working days per month. So I believe you're right. It's 60 working days. I can double check the schedule and get back to you on that though, to solidify it. But
Thank you. That's all I had.
Any other questions? All right, next item on the agenda is citizens' concerns. I do have 2 yellow cards from citizens wishing to speak. If anyone would like to speak that hasn't filled out a yellow card, please fill that out and get that to the city clerk. When I call your name, please approach the podium, state your name and address, and you'll be given 3 minutes to address the council. The first card that I have is for Carol Russell.
My name is Carol Russell. I live at 6218 East 45th Street North. My concern is still about the drainage in the construction area in Arthur Heights. I asked for the size of the water channels and everything, and no size has been placed on the plat. I keep looking at it on the website. I'd really like for you guys to look at page 33 of the plat that was described there. I believe it's at 53rd and Greenwich or somewhere like that. It's a different location than what this is. And it shows the easements, like how it's actually on a drain, floodplain. And it shows how the drain goes, how the water is going to be handled. And I'd really like to have that at 45th, right next to on 45th Street Court.
Okay, thank you. All right, the next request to speak is from Gary Jantz.
Gary Jantz, 6200 East 45th Street North. This on the Arthur Heights storage buildings. The first plan for the 2.34 acres was all storage buildings, which was not approved. Second plan was rezoning to R6 multifamily, 18 duplexes of 36 dwellings, which was overcrowded and overflow parking was inadequate and not approved. Now the plan is to split the 2.34 acres into 2 lots and combine storage buildings and 6 duplexes and 1 single family unit for a total of 13 dwellings. Lot 1 for storage buildings and Lot 2 for 13 dwellings. By doing this split, Lot 2 will have 33,780.6 square feet, which equals 0.775 acre, just slightly over 3/4 acre, making this the smallest lot in Arthur Heights rural addition with rental population of which could be 50 to 70 people. Once again, I would say this is overcrowded. Where will the children play? In the parking lot or the 10-foot utility easement, or maybe around the detention pond? At the last city council meeting on rezoning to R6 multifamily, The former city attorney stated that 2.34 acres was better suited for R5 zoning with a total of 6 dwellings per acre. This proposal we are looking at now doubles the dwellings to 13 in less than 1 acre. The city code 18.7.6 lists townhouses and condos should be in open space. Furthermore, the only plats on the city website is that of the drainage and utility easements. The only plan displayed at the Planning Commission was on the overhead flat screen showing the number of storage units and duplexes with detention pond, but this plat did not indicate building sizes or elevation drawings and no building setback dimensions of any kind. So if the Planning Commission approved these missing dimensions, it must have been behind closed doors. In addition, when a plat with indications of the buildings was displayed on the flat screen, it was after 2 neighbors left the meeting because the commission moved on to the next item on the agenda. The move deviated from the original agenda. This is not being good neighbors to leave the surrounding lot owners in the dark over the approval of this project. How can we as lot owners voice our concerns without the design and dimensional facts? Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next item on the agenda is council member reports. I will start with council member Hamburg.
Thank you, Mr. Council President. Attended the CCUA meeting last Thursday as an alternate for mayor when he was out of town. Saturday, I helped with the Lions at the e-recycling and shredding event. We had 300 people come through. It's a popular event. Took a break from that to go over to the Arbor Day celebration with the Bel Aire Tree Board. I appreciate their service, and as is their tradition each year, they planted a new Shumard oak over by the Central Park playground. So the tree board helps advise the city and citizens about how we can continue to be wise stewards of our natural resources. So I appreciate each of them volunteering. That's all I had, Mr. Council President.
Thank you, Mr. Dean.
Thank you. I have a small report. First of all, I wanted to congratulate Ty and city staff for all their hard work on the base grant that was recently approved, and that's a huge win for Bel Aire, as well as I appreciate the Spark Committee and leaders in Topeka who saw a need in our community and helped support that. Also, I wanted to congratulate our friends over in Sunflower Park. According to a Wichita Business Journal article on April 20th, Kansas Department of Commerce and Bel Aire-based South Central Kansas Economic Development District were selected to participate in a joint 10-month technical assistance initiative. The purpose of it is supported by U.S. Economic Development Administration and has a goal of improving returns on investment through policies that are in the best interest of constituents, according to a news release from the Commerce Department. So it's a great thing to see organizations in our community that are stepping up and becoming advocates for local, state funding. And then also attended a few events at Isley Elementary a couple weeks ago. They had back-to-back nights. They had a STEM night and a music program. So wanted to thank all of the volunteers and staff at the school that helped put that on and all the students that participated. And then a quick reminder that tomorrow, Wednesday at 11:30 is the next Bel Aire Chamber lunch. It'll actually be touring the FedEx facility. So that will be an interesting opportunity. So if anybody's interested in that, feel free to ask me and I can provide more information. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. David.
Mr. President, I also attended the CCUA meeting last Thursday where it was reported that once again we were out of compliance on our effluent. Influent was also above design parameters. That the problem was attributed to possibly some sensors that were changed out, and so hopefully that'll fix us up better for next month. Thank you.
Thank you. I also did attend that CCUA meeting. A couple of other items we did start reviewing the draft budget. So budget will be forthcoming from the CCUA. We did approve pay increase for our utility manager. And we had discussion on the consent order, which the CCUA is working with the KDHE on. We did take action in the CCUA meeting to direct the CCUA attorney to invite the city of Bel Aire and the city of Park City to a mediation to work through some of the outstanding issues between the two cities. So that passed unanimously amongst the CCUA board members. I was very optimistic about that. However, I was informed shortly before coming here that Park City has declined to participate in that mediation, and so it's been canceled, and we'll have to figure out alternative paths forward. That concludes my report. I'll ask for for Councilmember Welch's report.
The only thing I know that's going on is we got a garage sale going this weekend for the whole city. Everybody enjoy that. That's my report.
All right, I'll now ask for the mayor's report.
Thank you, Mr. President. So first of all, congratulations to Adalia Device, if I'm saying her name right. She's a student at Northeast High. So she received an honorable mention in the Congressional Art Complete competition for work called Red Bud in the Grove. Also, congratulations to Brooklyn Hides, if I'm saying her name right. So she also is from Northeast High School, and she won the People's Choice for her work called My Piece. So those works are available or still on display at Mark's Arts at Rock and 13th Street, and they'll be on display until May 12th. So 10 more days to go see those pieces of artwork. And there's several others there too, but those are the two Bel Aire people that won awards. So on Saturday, April 29th, I did participate in the e-recycling and paper shredding event by bringing my contributions for recycling. I do want to thank the Bel Aire Lions and recycling companies for their help in bringing this together for another year. Also on Saturday, I also attended the Arbor Day celebration with the Bel Aire Tree Board. A new tree was donated by the tree board, planted in Central Park, and neat trees that they donate in the last 2 years, near the trees that they donated in the last 2 years. Unfortunately, those other trees did not survive, and they were replaced this year. So Tree Board Chair Rebecca Armstrong made some very valuable comments. And I understand Bel Aire has been designated a Tree City USA for each of the last 27 years. So that's a great legacy, and I hope we will continue well into the future. So again, a big thank you to the Tree Board for all that they're doing for Bel Aire. Please continue to support Dollar General during the Woodlawn construction. I think we all look forward to the day that the July-August timeframe when Woodlawn will finally be open again for north and southbound traffic, the entire length from 37th to 45th. Doesn't mean it'll be completed. The road won't be done, but we will at least have traffic going both ways. So that would be a great thing. So that's my report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Does our interim city attorney have a report? City manager's report.
Thank you, Council President. I would like to expound on Councilmember Tyler's Dean's mention. Bel Aire was one of 4 recipients of the base grant from the state of Kansas, and that totaled $4.7 million for infrastructure improvements to be placed around the Sunflower Commerce Park and Integra. The city's match will be $1.5 million. So a good week for us last week for the community as a whole. Also like to thank the Lions Club for working the shredding and recycling, and Councilmember Hamburger is a member of that. The amount of recycling increased by 34% over last year, the e-recycling, and the weight of shredded materials increased by 62% from last year. Wow. So there was 8,900 pounds this year compared to 5,500 pounds last year. So a lot of people were using the recycling this year, probably left with a full truck, I would imagine. And then the last thing I did want to mention as Council President read the proclamation, there's two employees that are actually here today that I wanted to recognize. One is our city clerk. This is City Clerks Week. And wanted to recognize her for being our city clerk and all she does for us. And then our Public Works Director, Marty McGee, is here, and he received the Employee of the Quarter this last quarter for what he's done at Public Works and the support from his staff. So I appreciate both of them. So thank you, Council President.
Thank you. All right, we'll now move on to item 12, which is ordinances, resolutions, and final actions. Item A is considering the recommendation of the Aurora Parks Gravel Roads Task Force to test gravel and accept a quote from Northridge Sand. I understand that our city manager actually has a presentation on this recommendation.
Yes, thank you, Council President. I did want to update you and the council from your packet. Actually had some additional conversations with the Gravel Roads Committee, received some more information. So I wanted to update you on a few things, and they're here to answer some questions for you as well. But we've had these issues that we're trying to address in Aurora Park and Arthur Heights that have the gravel roads. So the council established a task force back last year. There's 12 members on it. They meet monthly, and they're to provide a report or presentation by the end of this year. And so what they want to run a test on using some gravel. Well, this is some of the duties is to study the issues, make recommendations, address the number of items that were discussed in the previous slide, complete the work, remedies, give you suggestions, those types of things. So they want to do a trial on this portion of Harding, basically the intersection of 40th down to 37th Street. And in your packet, there was some explanation of some rock, and I've got some additional recommendations from the task force on actually how to apply it. So what they're proposing is to use a 1-inch hard rock, spread it after a good rain. The city would grade the trial area, smoothing out the washboards, flatten it, softer surface, put down 1 inch of hard rock, and then if possible, roll it or drive over it a few times. We don't have a large roller, so we'd have to look at maybe renting one or driving over it. And then add a top coat of another 1 inch of hard gravel. And then if there's no rain, grade the road, go ahead anyway. And then leave the sample area undisturbed to see how the material holds up and see if it reduces the dust problem. And then do no grading until requested by the chairman or if the city sees a dire need to have it done. And the quote and what was included on your agenda was based on a 3.5-inch rock base, and that was something that from the first email we received, our staff just kind of put together a plan of what they thought to do, and then add using the same rock 3.5. But the committees actually, or the task force actually recommended 2 inches, which would reduce that quite a bit. So if you're interested in approving that, I would recommend approving up to 8,000, which that should cover this, which is much less gravel than what was proposed in the agenda. So the task force is here. The chairman is here, and if you've got any questions or if you guys would like to share anything else, I'll turn it over to them.
Good evening, Sean Matheny. What questions do you have?
Mr. President.
Mr. David.
Mr. Matheny, what's the little more science background between why'd you choose this rock, this size, and why did you choose that road? It looks like that's fairly heavily traveled. Are you trying to get the most heavily traveled and show that that's better than the lesser ones?
Yes,
Sorry.
that is correct. We thought it would be a good representation of the traffic and chose to do that intersection and include 37th or 40th and Harding intersections so that we get travel from all four directions over that. We looked at multiple rock, gravel, sand, all sorts of different products, and determined that this size 1 inch would be probably the most efficient. Anything larger becomes an issue with vehicles and tires, things like that. So we chose this because of the hard rock. It should hold up very well, and it should not create little dust, very little dust.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I have a couple questions.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, one is, we did a drainage study of that area, and I think we were contemplating doing some of that drainage work. I don't know exactly timeline-wise when that would be done. But does anybody, and maybe not necessarily the committee, but does maybe Mr. Lasher or if our city engineers there have any comments about how this would play with the drainage plan that's out there that we don't have a timeline on?
I don't have any, but is Ken Lee still here? Ken Lee actually did the drainage study, so maybe he's got some comments.
Well, again, Kinley with Garver, we did do the drainage study, and placing this rock on the road won't have any negative impacts on the drainage out there. I wouldn't see any reason why you would have any concerns as far as that goes. Okay,
good, thank you. So the other part is that this is a test, and I'm personally in favor of testing this if we can, but if this test doesn't work, we're going to have to remove that rock. What's that going to look like? Is that going to be a big deal because now we've changed that road around, or what are our thoughts about if this doesn't work? What would we want to do?
Chad has an answer for that one.
Yep, Chad Crittenden. I'm kind of the liaison for the committee as well. No different. This rock will break down eventually. No different than the KGE that we're putting down now, which breaks down really quickly because it's a limestone base, and it creates a lot of dust. And I think that's a lot of the issues from 2018 when we switched over to KGE to this is when we started having severe complaints from the residents back there. So even if this hard rock would still fail, I guess, it's just going to be packed down into the road from that point, and eventually it'll be broken down if we don't do anything to it. But I mean, running the grader over it will continue to break it down, and the cars driving over it. So it shouldn't be anything that needs to be pulled up or removed, even if it would fail at some point in action there. And this rock is actually cheaper by $2 and I think $2.25 a ton. The city did a great job getting the price because they almost got this cut by 50% than what they're charging to the public right now. So that's pretty outstanding to get the premium rock at that price. The downfall is though we're paying for delivery, so that almost doubles the price at that end of where the city's currently getting their own rock. So that kind of jumps the number up a little bit.
Okay. Thank you for that information. I appreciate it.
Mr. Council President.
Mr. Dean.
I had a quick question, and this might be more for Ann or Ty about the rock. Have we ever tried this 1 inch hard rock style in any recent history that you know of? I'm just asking that question.
To my knowledge, we have never tried this type of rock before. I'm not 100% sure what we used before the KG&E, but it was a similar limestone type product.
And then the other question I had was just for the public's knowledge, how much more does this rock cost compared to the proposed test rock or what we normally would use? And I'm sure you've got that.
Yeah, we're paying, I think, $19.25 a ton for the KGE rock now.
Right.
and we were quoted from Northridge at 17 a ton.
Yeah.
But it then comes with a $15 a
Right.
ton delivery fee on that. So hopefully after this test run, or if there was ever maintenance to be done, if this does succeed, hopefully we won't be needing such a big bulk at one time, and the city could just use their trucks to do small batches when needed to fill in, and we could really cut that price in half from that point.
I know it makes sense. I'm supportive of testing it. I do appreciate cutting down the amount because I think we're going to overspend our budget. So that was really nice to be able to do that, to test it. I will you've kind of already touched on it. I mean, at the end of the day, this rock, no matter how premium it is, it's just going to get pushed into the ground because the soft subgrade. So it is nice. It should hopefully prove to reduce the dust, but it's not a permanent fix by any means. So just want you to understand that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate your work though.
And I think the big issue with the committee, and we had a lot of questions of which is more important: drainage, rock, all these things. And predominantly from the committee, it's the dust. So people are just mainly looking for that dust reduction, so they can get out back in the yards and spend outside time again.
Well, appreciate all your time with your volunteer efforts, and thank you.
No, I don't.
Any other questions? One question that I had is just, this is kind of an experiment. It's a trial area to understand how well it's going to work. How are you going to understand if it's successful? Like, you guys talked about what measuring good looks like?
I think that will become obvious. It will be how long the rock lasts. And we'll see, I think we'll see an immediate difference, and we'll know if it's successful in the dust suppression just by the fact of the traffic driving up and down it. We have no official way to measure whether it worked or not. I think it'll just be a question for the residents and the task force, that as we all drive upon that, to see how it holds up and how long it lasts. If it brings back the washboarding after a rain, if it suppresses the dust, if it does break down too quickly, then we'll know it's not a solution. We're used to driving on the rest of it. We have a good idea, so I think we'll be able to tell.
Then I guess my other question was just like, from a public works perspective, do we have any concerns with the maintenance side of this in the interim test period? Is it going to create an issue to maintain the other parts of the street? Do we feel good about it being left in place if we decide not to move forward with this and the other areas? Are we okay with all of that?
Yeah, we've talked about it. We're fine giving it a try and see if it works, especially coming down. Our concern was the 4 inches of gravel could cause them. And after talking about coming down to 2, I think that's much better. And we're interested to see how it works. And we're happy to stay off the gravel grading and those kind of stuff, again, to see if that affects, the less grading helps or not. So, yeah.
We've got several committee members that live on Harding. Well, we've got 2 and a couple real close by on there, and then we've got folks that are not. So most of us know everybody up Harding, so it's not going to be hard for us to knock on the door and say, what do you think? And that road's going to get the high. I mean, it's a 30-mile-per-hour speed limit back there, but that's not what people drive. So I think that'll be the most accurate because it's the longest strip where people can really get up to speed. So I think that'll be a true test to how it holds up.
Was this a unanimous recommendation from the committee, or was anyone opposed to this?
Was.
Okay.
After looking at several other options, we decided this was the best one.
So just a curiosity, have you talked with the other homeowners along there about this option if the city council would approve this so that they're aware of it?
No, we have not. We decided to wait until after the test and then approach it that way. Because if
But
the
they're gonna
test
see
fails,
that-
we're going to look at something different.
Okay, but they're going to see that laid down and they're going to say, hey, what are you doing in front of my house?
Yeah,
that is a good point.
Yep. They see the trucks dumping rock before, but I don't have any issue because there's not that many residents. We go on walks almost nightly, so I don't have any problem notifying people up and down Harding anyway myself.
I think that would be just good if this is approved, that somebody take the action and just say, hey, this council approved this is going to happen. Okay.
Yeah, we will.
How long do we think it'll be before we kind of know if this works, if we're going to call it a success or not?
We were thinking maybe 60 days, a couple months. Now we're finally starting to every once in a while get some rain, so that would be kind of nice to see how it packs down after a couple rains and how cars drive over it. But we were hoping 2 months would be a pretty good test run.
Okay. Any other questions for the task force?
Appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Mr. President,
Mr. David,
make a motion to accept the recommendation of the Aurora Parks Gravel Roads Task Force to test gravel as presented and accept the bid from Northridge Sand LLC for 1-inch hard rock gravel in the amount not to exceed $8,000 and authorize the city manager to sign all related documents.
I'll second.
I have a first by Mr. David and a second by Mr. Dean. Is there any discussion? See no discussion. I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. The next item on the agenda is consideration of a quote for a used vac truck or a Vector tandem axle combination sewer cleaner truck in the amount of $305,825. At our last meeting, we discussed this and approved a threshold for approving this new truck, and I believe we found one, and it was slightly more expensive than planned. Are there any questions of the city manager or public works director on this item? All right, seeing no questions, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Council President,
Ms. Hamburg.
I'm going to make a motion to approve the quote from Key Equipment and Supply Company for a used Vector tandem axle combination sewer cleaner truck in the amount not to exceed $305,825 and authorize the city manager to sign.
I'll second.
I have a first and a second. Is there any discussion? See no discussion. I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Consideration of a bid for manhole rehab. There were 2 bids received. So the city budgets money annually from the sewer fund to repair and replace sewer infrastructure. Manholes can become corroded, causing problems. So it's been our goal to rehab a certain number of manholes each year. Our city engineer and public works director are here to discuss the work and answer any questions.
Mr. President,
Mr. Welch.
I did have one question. All of these manholes are going to be out of the way of any work we would do in the future on 53rd. Is that correct?
I believe so. I don't think that they're anywhere. They should be far enough out of the right of way that or on the edge of the right of way that we should be fine. I don't foresee that expanding to a 5-lane section anytime soon, but we did not specifically look at that.
Okay, I just didn't want them out. I couldn't remember where they were and didn't want to have to redo them in 2 years because we paved over them or something.
Yeah, no, and these are primarily on the section between Rock Road and Woodlawn, up to the 53rd Street, but they're handled in the 53rd Street design, and there is no plans for relocating any manholes with the 53rd Street project from Oliver to Woodlawn.
All right, thank you.
Did you have any other content you wanted to cover on this?
The only thing that I would add is these are in a fairly highly corrosive environment. The Rock Road lift station sees sewage from the far reaches east in the far east portions of Bel Aire. That sewage does sit in the pipes for a fairly decent length of time, so the sewer gases do have time to build up. these manholes have never been lined, never been coated other than the original coating. So if we want to save these manholes, we do need to get this done here fairly soon.
Mr. Council President,
Mr. Dean.
I'll motion to accept the bid from UMC at a cost not to exceed $129,500 for manhole rehab and authorize the city manager to sign.
I will second that. So the motion has a first and a second. Is there any discussion? See no additional discussion. I'll call for a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0. The next item is consideration of accepting the dedication of streets and other public ways. The developer of Arthur Heights requested a few changes to the PUD. The Planning Commission considered the PUD, held a public hearing, and voted 4-0 to approve the PUD. Our Planning and Development Director is here to explain the PUD and answer any questions.
Which is Ken Lee, because he's the man of the hour. He also can answer any questions if you have them.
So can you tell us just a little bit about what's going on here?
Basically, it's just a lot split of the existing flag lot there. Doing a split to get that 45th Street North court in there as a dedicated city right-of-way. There may be some verbiage change with the PUD. I'd have to consult the attorney on that just because the lot numbers are going to change. So the wording may be different, but it wouldn't change any of the requirements or anything specific to the PUD other than adding a couple lots.
So the lot's being split, but the zoning's not changing.
Nothing's changing within the PUD wording. It would just merely be changing the lot number 1 and 2, because right now the way the verbiage in the PUD is we've got 4, 5, 6, and 7. So it would be just changing some numbers around. But they're not asking to do anything to change any of the requirements inside the existing PUD.
Well, I'm not sure I understand the purpose of the request.
Ken has a good answer for that. So I'll let him.
Ken Lee with Garver again. We're the plating engineer for it. And you heard the PUD when we attempted to modify the PUD a few months ago. That request was denied because it felt like it was too impactful. So there was comments about not getting to really review a site plan, and we're not really changing. We're not providing a site plan at this time. We provided one for informational purposes so that the Planning Commission could see what we're doing. But this is a plating request. It's not really a site plan request. And so the purpose of the changes, though, is the developer wants to put in residential, which is allowed with the PUD, on the north half of the east lot. And then they want to do storage units on the west half. And one of the pieces of feedback, sorry, I'll get close to this microphone here. One of the feedbacks that was from the other, when it was denied, is the residents adjacent to it did not want to have duplexes next to their homes. And they specifically said they would rather have storage units. So we went to the developer, gave them that feedback. So that's what we're doing. And the PUD language allows single family or the R6 density in the north half of the lot. It's R5 density in the north half. So in order to be able to access it and provide access to both lots and be able to have separate owners in the future, we needed to have a public roadway into there. So really the only purpose of this was for the public roadway. So that's a long answer for what we're trying to do here. But to accommodate the requests of the residents to where we would have storage units adjacent to their property, so they won't have none of the existing single family homes are going to have duplexes that directly abut them. Where those will all be duplexes, or sorry, storage units. The whole purpose of that was to get that road to provide access to both parcels.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. Are there any questions on this item?
Council President,
Mr. Mayor.
I have a question for our mayor, for our city attorney. If they've not finalized the PUD, can we consider this tonight? Or it sounds like there's still some need to make some changes in that PUD. I'm sorry, I'm not hearing you.
Okay, is that better?
Yes, thank
Sorry,
you.
I'm not used to the microphone. Yeah, no, I actually was thinking along those same lines, Mayor. I did not know sort of where we were at on, I mean, is the plat, we're looking to change a plat that's already finalized, or?
No. So the PUD in its original ordinance that was done is the same as it is. Once this plat would be approved, then we would change the verbiage of the PUD for approval, and it would be changing lot numbers and maybe adding a street in there. I'm not sure exactly how the wording would go, but I guess that in the order of doing things, we would approve the concept or the plat, and then amend the PUD verbiage.
I think it can be done in that order. I don't know why it can't. I mean, I'd have to probably go consult a special handbook on platting, because this is always, I think, a little more complicated than we.
Yeah, within a PUD, it is more complicated. With a previous attorney, she never brought up doing it in the opposite order. I don't know. I guess it could have been done that way, or it could have been done simultaneously, I suppose. But once I guess the thought process was, if the plat got approved, then we would go through the process of doing the PUD wording change. But again, they're not asking to change any of the intent of the PUD. We're just going to have to change some lot numbers.
When you change the plat, does that wipe away the PUD, or does the PUD stay there?
The PUD stays. I guess that was for her. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
But the PUD will stay as it is, and everything in the content of the PUD will be exactly the same. This is just going to change, like I said, some lot numbers, and that should be it. I've read the PUD a couple of times, and I think it's just that would probably be all that would be amended if this is approved.
Mr. President.
Mr. David.
So if I understand, you need both of these changes to make this happen. Why wouldn't you do them together?
You would need this approved, and then the PUD verbiage is a little bit more of just some. It's not a. Let's see, what am I trying to say here? Kind of just doing up some cleanup on the wording of it. To be, I guess what we were gonna do would be to amend Ordinance 642, which is the original PUD, to a new ordinance with just a couple of changes. But I don't think that, as far as timing goes, that we need to. We're not holding up anything, or it's not going to be a problem for the developer to get the PUD done before they start anything.
Can I
Yes.
So the one thing along that line is, as far as the timing for it, we've already told the developer right now that we're at least 2 months out from starting any work. So there's a couple months to handle the cleaning up of the lot numbers in the PUD. And again, we're not changing any of the uses of the PUD as far as what was called out, as far as the type of residential use allowed, where it was allowed on the lot, those type of things. We didn't change that at all. It was left that way. One brief aside I'll mention, one of the concerns that was brought up when it was the previous version was rejected was lack of adequate parking. And so by zoning, we're required to have 2 parking spots per dwelling unit. And because of that concern, one thing I wanted to mention is we are going to provide 3 parking spots per dwelling unit as part of what we're doing here. So again, we are doing that. But as far as in compliance with the PUD, we are complying with it. Like he said, it's just going to be changing. Like, you can't have residential uses in the south half of I think it was lot 5. We're still complying with that. It's just going to have the lot number changed is really all that discussion is. And Unfortunately, that wasn't brought up before. We would have done those in parallel, but it wasn't brought up before as a necessary change. So if we'd have realized it, we would have done them in parallel.
Mr. Council President,
Ms. Hamburg.
I appreciate all that background and what is and is not changing. So with that explanation, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to accept the dedication of streets and the other public ways, service and utility easements, and land dedicated for public use as shown on the final plat of the Arthur Heights PUD, PUD 23-01. I apologize. I read the wrong thing. I'm going to make a motion to accept the dedications within the final plat for Arthur Heights PUD and authorize all required signatures.
I'll second.
Okay, we do have a first and a second. Is there any additional discussion?
Mr. President,
Councilmember Welch.
I'm not sure what basis this has on this question exactly, but one of the things that's bothered me about everything that's come up on this parcel is that it's a almost totally impervious surface, and we're dumping a ton of water down to the corner of 45th and Woodlawn.
In the concept drawing that the Planning Commission saw when they approved this, there will be a detention pond on the south part of the lot, and anything that we go through with drainage to answer some of the concerns of citizens. Obviously, Ann, our city engineer, she has a look at everything we do before we approve anything. So she's seen the drainage plan from Garver with the detention pond and other things. So I see the concern, but much smarter people have looked. It's much smarter than me have looked at it and have the drainage a certain way that it corresponds with the city's master drainage plan.
Okay, if it has a retention pond, it's probably been designed okay, but last time we were putting everything we could into the storm sewer pipe. We were filling it totally up just from this lot.
Sorry, I'll just go ahead and interject. If you look at the plat that's presented there, Reserve A is going to be that entire reserve is a detention pond in the middle of that. So that Reserve A that's on the south half of what used to be, I believe, Lot 5 it's Lot 2 now. That'll be detention pond, and it's actually been designed large enough to handle not only its own drainage but also the drainage on the lot to the east. It'll handle runoff from both of those.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Mr. Lee.
Any other discussion on this item? Hearing no other discussion, this is a roll call vote. I'll ask the city clerk to please call roll.
Thank you. Mr. Greg David,
Aye.
Mr. Tyler Dean,
Aye.
Miss Emily Hamburg,
Aye.
Mr. Justin Smith,
Aye.
Mr. John Welch,
Aye.
and Mayor Jim Benaj.
Aye.
And the motion carries 6-0, Mr. President.
Thank you. Item E, the developer of Bel Aire Lakes is ready to move forward with plating. The Planning Commission reviewed the plat, held a public hearing, and voted 4-0 to approve the plat, accepting the dedication of streets and other right-of-ways now come before the City Council. Our Planning and Development Director is here to discuss the plat and answer any questions.
So can you tell us where is this Bel Aire Lakes? I couldn't tell from the plat I looked at.
This is 53rd and Webb, just north of the Cedar Pass that was approved earlier, I think earlier last year.
Right.
Any questions?
This was platted last year sometime, wasn't it?
This was started as Shamway Estates. You probably saw a preliminary plat in the middle of last year. Changed to Bel Aire Lakes when we got through to the final.
That does sound a lot more familiar.
Shamway Estates was what it started out as. We approved, the Planning Commission approved the preliminary plat, sometime in the middle of last year. And then took some time to get everything squared away, but this is the final on it.
Did the planning commission discuss green space and parks in this development?
They did. Went through all the checklist there with the preliminary and the final as well. They also discussed drainage and that sort of thing.
As I remember right, they did not have any parks in this development. Is that correct?
I don't believe there are any.
This is about
parks.
80 acres.
It is approximately 78.8 acres.
Okay, thank you.
And this one, when we did the preliminary was when I had first started. So I don't have a whole lot of knowledge on the initial conversations. Just Ann may have some if you're interested in that, but.
Well, I will say, as I said before, I am not excited about a development of this size that has no parks in it. That just doesn't seem very tenable. Maybe we don't have that in our ordinances, but we do have them in our master plan. And I will vote against this one.
Yeah, that's why I asked that question. I was also concerned about it. It's really hard to tell from that final plat if there was any dedication to parks. Those drawings are a little hard to read, and so that's why I wanted to understand that.
Yeah, it's pretty busy, pretty large. The reserves are pretty much for drainage, and I don't remember there being any parks.
Mr. Council President.
Mr. Dean.
I had a question. Does this road then that connects the Tobin Drive, will that connect to the other
Yes.
development that's under construction right now?
Yes.
And that one does have a park dedicated? Those two neighborhoods will essentially be one after that is done? The Cedar Pass, does it connect?
Cedar Pass will connect on Tobin, on the south part of Tobin, on Bel Aire Lakes. Will meet with the north part of Tobin from Cedar Pass, and Cedar Pass was done before my time. So if there's a park there, I'm not 100%.
From my recollection, neither Cedar Pass nor Bel Aire Lakes has a park. It is not part of our zoning or not part of our subdivision platting requirements. It is not part of our zoning requirements. There is one piece of our zoning requirements. We have the golden factors, which are like 7 different things. One of them is conformance with the master plan. If this subdivision significantly meets the rest of the factors, it is up to the planning commission to choose how that is. If it is the council's wish to change our regulations to have parks be more of a stronger aspect, especially in these larger lots, that is something that myself along with Jay can be looking at to get some different regulations for you to consider. But at this time, it is not part of our regulations.
I think that is something that this council's discussed a couple of times. We probably do need to look in making that more clear in the regulations. I do recall, as per the mayor's comments, that is something that's addressed in our growth plan, which is one of the golden factors, one of the things that we consider in these types of items.
Yes, you're correct. And I appreciate Ann talking about it because we have mentioned that. It's kind of a give and take. The 80 acres to the south of this, the developer there did not have any either. Council instructed me to ask if he would dedicate some, and he chose not to. But there are cities that do require certain acres of plats to contain public spaces in them. That our codes do not require that. So, certainly we could ask him, but it's not a requirement. The other piece of it that we've talked about is, there's a two-way commitment. If we're going to ask the developer to give up 3 lots and he or she sells those for $20,000 a piece, that's $60,000 he's given up in property. And so his expectation would be for the city to invest in that. And, we're looking at doing just that in Skyview. You're looking at $150,000 to $200,000 for park equipment and things like that. So just something to think about. If we're going to ask for that, then, I think the city needs to be prepared to pay to install some equipment there and such. So, but that's certainly, if it's something that the governing body would like us to update our codes to make requirements of that, we can certainly do that because it's done by other cities.
I would definitely like to update our codes. I've asked for that in the past. However, on this plat, we've got 2 reserves, and I don't know what they're for. They're Reserve D and Reserve A, and they're outside of the floodplain. Is it possible those could be used for parks?
I think it was an engineer that spoke with the planning commission. Right now, they're mainly for drainage purposes. I'm not sure of the viability of a park in the area, but that's definitely something we could flirt with and ask.
Well, I know a lot of parks are put in drainage areas because it's places they don't want to build anything else anyway, and nobody wants to go when it's rainy anyway. So
Yeah, those reserves are dedicated for the drainage purposes. There really is not much room to put any sort of park other than maybe a walking path around the outside. That is something that we can certainly request of the developer. As the city manager mentioned, there is a cost in that. It is a give and take. That is something that we can certainly work with. It would be up to the city manager and the city attorney as to whether that could be a requirement.
I'm assuming there'll be a sidewalk along Bluebird. That will be green space at least along the north edge?
Yes, there is. There is, yes.
I mean, that at least gives you a nice walking path. Doesn't really go anywhere, but you can walk.
Yeah, my personal perspective on this is that we need to look at those rules. Those rules aren't there necessarily now. And while we do have it in our master plan, we did approve it for the spot, just to the south of there. And so I do think it's important to apply the rules consistently. So personally, I'm probably going to fall on the side of voting for this.
I agree with you, Mr. Smith, but I think we need to make every effort to get this under discussion at a workshop or whatever to review the parks requirements sooner than later.
I might also throw out with that Cedar Pass neighborhood being directly connected in south, would it make some sense to workshop the idea of splitting a park between the two somehow to discuss that with both developers as a cost share between all 3?
Cedar Pass, I think they've begun some of the infrastructure, but there's no construction going. So, I mean, it could be a conversation that could be.
Or we could situate it so that it could be used by both neighborhoods and split the cost. Anyway, I'm in support of it because the rules that we currently have of voting for this, but I would too also like to see that requirement because I think it would make our community a better place to live.
Mr. Council President?
Ms. Hamburg.
Yeah, I'm thinking along the same lines in terms of what we've approved with, what our current regulations are. We'll get into this into a workshop. I get a little uncomfortable when we start saying what subjective preferences should be and what developers should and shouldn't put in. But that's down the road when we have that discussion at workshop. So what's at hand right now, I'm in support of approving this. Thank you.
Would anyone like to make a motion?
Mr. Council President?
Ms. Hamburg.
I'll make a motion to accept the dedications within the final plat for Bel Aire Lakes and authorize all required signatures.
I'll second.
I have a first and a second. Any further discussion? This is a roll call vote. Would our city clerk please call the roll?
Thank you, Mr. Council President. Mr. Greg David,
Aye.
Mr. Tyler Dean,
Aye.
Miss Emily Hamburg,
Aye.
Mr. Justin Smith,
Aye.
Mr. John Welch,
Aye.
and Mayor Jim Benaj.
Opposed?
And the motion carries 5-1. Mr. Council President, thank you.
All right, executive session is our next topic. We do have two separate executive sessions on the agenda. Staff is requesting 30 minutes for the first one.
Mr. Council President,
Mr. Dean.
I'll motion to go into executive session for the sole purpose of discussing the subject of attorney-client consultation regarding contractual obligations pursuant to KSA 75-4319 exception for attorney-client privilege. Invite the city manager, interim city attorney, Brian Meyer, and Ken Lee. The meeting will be for a period of 30 minutes, and the open meeting will resume in city council chambers at 9 p.m.
I'll second.
I have a first and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. We are in executive session.
I'm not hearing anything.
Oh, can we mute that?
Yeah.
All right, we're back from executive session where no binding action was taken. I believe we do have the need to extend the executive session for an additional 10 minutes.
Oh, sorry, I didn't have my mic on. I'll motion to extend the executive session for 10 minutes and resume city council meeting in chambers at 9:17 p.m.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0. We're in executive session. We are back from executive session where no binding action was taken. We are ready for item B, which is another executive session. Looks like this one needs to be for an additional 30 minutes.
Council President,
Mr. Dean.
I'd like to motion to go into executive session for the sole purpose of discussing the subject of matters of non-elected personnel pursuant to the KSA 75-4319, exception for the same. Invite the city manager and interim city attorney. The meeting will be for a period of 30 minutes, and the open meeting will resume in council chambers at 9:50 p.m.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. We're in executive session for 30 minutes. All right, we are back from executive session where no binding action was taken. Next item on the agenda is discussion and future issues. There's a regularly scheduled workshop for May 9th at 6:30 p.m. Does that work for everyone? Seeing some head nods. Okay. Any other future issues? Okay, next item on the agenda is adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. We are adjourned.